Hello and welcome. This is Ravina from The Hindu, and we are back with yet another webinar. We do these webinars every Saturday as part of our education vertical, where we discuss key issues in education and sometimes career tips and guidance for students. Today, as we speak, schools and colleges across the country in some states, like for example in Odisha, from April 18th, which is today, to April 21, schools are announced to be shut because of intense heat waves sweeping the state. Also in Nagpur today, they have asked to shut all the schools, colleges, and coaching institutes because of heat waves. Now, as this happens, this is not something that is just happening this year. It's nothing new. Every year, because of climate crisis or some extreme climate events, schools and other types of educational institutes are disrupted. The schooling calendar gets disrupted. If we look at a UNICEF analysis from 2024, it says that education is disrupted for 242 million students across 85 countries. That was just for 2024. Now, when we speak of this, we can clearly see the numbers show that education is heavily disrupted by climate events. But what we don't see is a real connect between students and climate education. Even today, environmental education is limited to textbook and examination. So, there is an upcoming research by Asar. We have two panelists from the organization which talks about how climate education can be a climate mitigation strategy, and we are here to discuss that today. So, before we proceed with the questions, I would like all the panelists to give their introductory remarks on the topic as to how is climate education delivered today? Is it good enough? What we are doing, and what more needs to be done? Shantanu sir, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm Santanu Goswami. I'm a faculty of climate change at Azim Premji University, Bangalore, and I've been doing climate research for about 2 decades now. Just as an opening remark, what I'd like to say is that we are in a very interesting scenario. So our school system has about 25 crores children that goes to school. It itself makes it the largest school cohort in the entire world. And as right in the beginning, as Robina, as you were saying, that we are experiencing, like in the country, we are experiencing this climate crisis, and we have been, seeing this going like worse every day. And from our climate projections, what we see, that the scenario for the entire country is not looking very good in the immediate future. In spite of this, in our classrooms, in our curriculum, in the teacher training, in state climate action plans, we are still treating climate education, I mean, as at best, if I can say, a supporting act, right? But from research, whatever is basically from research, it's established that uh, taking climate education seriously, it can have a generational amplifier, and also make people a lot more responsible. Now, thinking about India itself, and the large cohort that we had in terms of the children, and basically like combine the students and the parents and everything. In my opinion, the classroom is currently is considered as a peripheral to climate action. Actually, it is not, and so we have to take it seriously. And the choice that we make today regarding climate education, that means how we are going to educate the current generation, is going to determine what the emission scenario is going to be for the country in few decades from now. So I just look forward to a rich discussion in the panel. So that's all I wanted to say as an opening remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Uh, Jaya ma'am.
Good evening, everyone, and it's a great privilege to be part of this panel discussion, and especially when the topic is all about climate education, isn't it? This is very much relevant and it is meaningful as well as significant also. So, not only for the future, when we look at climate education, the reality is seen today. So that's where I think the universities and schools they are closely working on this, particularly this topic. And I must say, I am an educator by choice for past 2 decades, more than 2 decades actually. And I have been instrumental in promoting sustainable solutions in the school, whichever organization I have been working with. So, my opening remark for this panel discussion would be, we all have one golden sun, isn't it? And we all have one moon that we see every day. And we are living in this beautiful earth. So let's protect, let's do our bit to save the environment, so that this topic, what we are going to discuss, it gets subsumed with all the other environmental factors or the issues. Over to you, Ms. Ravina, and thank you so much for this opportunity from the Hindu. And thanks to my mentor who actually, kind of suggested my name for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Pallavi, ma'am, would you like to go next?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ravina, for this platform to talk about this important piece of work that we've been engaged in for the last few months and for a long time in our program, which is the Climate and Education program at Asar Social Impact Advisors. We've been dealing with, and this echoes what was said earlier, we've been dealing with a view of climate education as being something that is, like many other disciplines and subjects, is something that is just informational. And we can no longer look at climate education just being another kind of textbook or another kind of syllabus. And it needs to be wholly transformational in the sense that it not only prepares our young for the present and their future, but is also helping them actually dream of a different future. And keeping that in mind, I think we were looking at what would it take then to really make engagement around climate education more rigorous and not just about adaptation and resilience building. So this paper, in that sense, has been seminal to nudging people to actually start looking at climate education with a lot more rigor and seriousness. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with the other panelists here.
Thank you so much, Arjun, sir.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ravina and the Hindu, for this opportunity. My name is Arjun. I work as a program officer at Asar, and I'm one of the co-authors of the paper that we'll be discussing today. So I'll keep it short. I think most of my fellow panelists have covered what we are all thinking right now, but the idea behind doing this paper and why we're not looking at education as a mitigation strategy and instead looking at it from adaptation and resilience is because I think how have been looking at climate education as sort of only being awareness building and not as a climate action tool. So we know if education can shape behavior and norms and collective thinking, why can't climate education then be a very strong under leverage currently mitigation tool that we can use to have a better future for all of us. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We already have a lot of questions coming in, but before I go to the questions, can Pallavi ma'am and Arjun sir give briefly some points as to what the research paper actually says? Pallavi ma'am, would you go first?
Actually, over to the author of the paper. I'd like
Sure.
him to, yeah, go for it, Arjun.
Yeah, yeah. So the paper I think is essentially talking about how there is a growing body of evidence now, which is talking about how introduction of climate education uh, is leading to mitigative actions among the students, right? And the evidence is emerging, but it is credible. We've seen key studies that shows over a long period of time, people have taken climate mitigative actions. I would like to present a bit on the numbers and what those things are. One second. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is, can climate education reduce emissions, right? It's what we're all thinking. Like, if we're thinking of it as a mitigation strategy, does it actually lead to emissions reductions? And the answer from multiple studies is a resounding yes, right? Some studies have actually quantified this into it being like an individual reducing emissions across a year as around 3 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reduced per person per year. And the evidence also says that this is happening in largely three ways. So they're making different transport choices, different food habits, and different sort of energy use, right? However, there is a caveat here that I would also like to bring up, in the sense that these evidence that is emerging is largely from the global north, where we do know that the per capita emissions are also comparatively high compared to, say, a country like India. So, what is also important, and what we have also talked about in the paper, is a need for individual action to also sort of turn into collective action, right? Because if we're thinking per capita emissions to be low, it is going to be a maybe a good assumption that the impact that an individual can have in a country like in India will also be low. So the idea is that we transition from an individual action, which is an entry point definitely, but it is insufficient in some sense to uh, think that it will have a meaningful impact without actually having collective action at the community level. So, this is essentially the large argument that we try to make in the paper about what the evidence and what the call for climate education as a mitigation tool should be in a country like India.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Pallavi ma'am.
Yeah, I just like to add that from the policy side, I think taking a mitigation focus can really make the process or the framing of curriculum a wholly different exercise. So, at this point, as we all know, it is informational. And through a first time voters survey that we carried out in 2024 before the Lok Sabha elections across 4 states, we found that a lot of young people are clearly asking for an education that enables action and enables collective action. And currently, just given how the framing of curriculum is happening, it is it I wouldn't even say it actually prepares young people for adaptation or resilience. So the mitigation focus is an important focus. The path is a little tenuous, but certainly it begs thinking around curriculum for climate education with a mitigation focus.
Thank you so much. With this, I would like to take first question from our audience, which is from Arvinder Singh, who asks, "How can environment education curriculum connect with different subjects? A standalone environment education won't serve the purpose. Do we need this to be more interdisciplinary? What would be the approach? Any one of you?"
Can I
Uh,
take this?
yeah, please go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. So, environmental education. See, when we tell that, we need to look at imparting how we are going to impart it. So, this climate education should be taught explicitly as well as implicitly. Now, what is explicitly? It is taught like a topic. Children need to know what is climate change, what is greenhouse impact, what are the impacts, what are the causes, consequences, all these things children need to know. So that's the explicitly we need to give that, impart that education. But when it comes to implicit model, the school or the environment itself serves as a purpose of the implicit model. How is it? If the infrastructure gives the scope, like having a kitchen patch or having the curriculum already built on the climate action to be imbibed as, subsumed as part of the curriculum, then it is implicitly taught. Children are going to actually imitate the environment, the people, and what they are going to see and feel. So that's how it has to be explicitly as well as implicitly taught. So when I say this, it's no more now the environmental education is a part of, let's say, geography, or maybe let's look it as a subject. No more, because children need to have a feel of it. See, we have done in our schools earlier, like we actually ask them to be like, when they go for, especially I need to give an example solid about it. What does this mean by implicit model? When they were going for Diwali break, children were asked to just reflect on what they see around them when they come back. So, a few children, when they came, they said that they were very upset with how the crackers were burnt, and maybe it spoiled the ecosystem, the water body ecosystem. So, we said, what's the solution? So it's coming from them. So they are the owners of the learning. So it's coming from them. So we asked them, what are the things that we could do. So they said that we will go around and find out how we can go ahead and clean that particular water body. So that's how, when we prepare the environment for them to reflect and to revisit their learning, the first one, which I said explicitly, explicit model, basically it's about the knowledge model. It talks about the facts and figures. But when it comes to implicit model, they feel it. So what happens when we feel it? It becomes a habit and it turns to be the culture. So what I feel is that it depends on the schools or the colleges how to take it ahead in terms of how we are imparting the climate education to the students. It can be through any subject. If you can kind of put climate action as one of the actionable element, I think children will come up with meaningful action, and they will also understand that we are not learning things in silos, rather it's a holistic model. I hope I am able to give throw some insight to this question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Definitely. We got your point, and it is, of course, important to teach it both ways. Shantanu, sir, you had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is very nice to hear. I just wanted to add it maybe from the higher education perspective, right? Because maybe I'll share some experience that I have had. So in the university I'm at right now, we offer two programs. One is your uh, undergraduate program in environmental science and sustainability, and a postgraduate program in climate change and sustainability. Right. I know things are going to be a little different when it comes to school education. But from here, I just wanted to talk about how we looked at it. Right. So both are BSc and MSc, basically science degree. But when we bring in students, we allow students from any discipline to apply and get into the program. So basically, we say that your previous learning track should not be a limitation for you to become a climate change, sustainability, or environmental practitioner, right? Because we believe that problems are so complex that a disciplinary track cannot really solve these problems, right? And then, uh, I mean, the way we frame it, frame the undergraduate program or the postgraduate program, we try to bring in that socio-ecological perspective to the students, And in the classroom, when we teach this very different like range of subjects, we try to make sure that the classrooms are very interactive, because the end goal that we have, that we want to develop reflective practitioners, right? So who can connect to issues, in local issues, and who can actually connect their learning into something they experience. Again, I'm saying it as a practitioner, like the way we do things. For example, when I was say when I'd be teaching an earth system science course, so that's a science course, right? But when and then you're teaching to a group of students who come from very different background. So one thing that really works, the students, uh, as they're learning, they also start connecting to issues that they see, and they carry out a project, and then they are always encouraged to actually pick up something that they experience back in the villages, or in the surroundings, like that. So, and that seemed to be uh, making sense, because the students end up becoming, how would I say, become like reflective practitioners. I think that is very important when it comes to environmental science or climate education, because uh, over the years, over the decades, actually, when it comes to environmental education, one thing we've been doing it wrong. I'm going to say that we have been mostly focusing on uh, learning from the textbook, right? I mean, I know other like panelists will also have other things to say. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Arjun, sir, would you like to contribute to this question?
Um, I don't have anything much to add, other
Okay.
than, yeah, I mean, I'll take like a different question if it comes up. Thanks,
Yeah,
Ravina.
okay, okay, no problem. So I'll move on to the next question. Somebody here. Okay, first. Okay, somebody was saying lost one comment, but there was one very interesting comment which was not more of a question, but somebody was saying, how these small habits of asking a student to switch off lights, or if there is some pipe that is broken and water is flowing, are they reporting it? Inculcating these tiny habits is something that would still make a difference. If not, bigger steps are not happening at this point. Moving on to the next question. How can schools set aside time to provide hands on experience to know, learn, and challenge in order to participate and preserve our environment instead of theoretical knowledge? I mean, I think we have gone over this over and over again, that we can't just be learning from textbooks, but then how do we do it?
So I can take that question.
Yeah.
And I want to bring, attention back to the paper. Um, so really in the way that education takes place, and I'm going to talk about, our state government schools, right? Um, unless we're looking at engaging with policymakers, right, in how this curriculum is really executed, we are not going to really be able to see any major shift. There's a lot of work happening through various civil society organizations, a lot of volunteer programs that do focus on environmental awareness, some kind of sustainability projects for children in schools. But these are largely at the periphery of what happens in the schools, right? Unless a lot of this good intention on the ground is really, and the momentum of it is met with political will or even policy change, we're not going to be able to see greater kind of rigor or that interdisciplinarity that was mentioned via that previous question. There's not going to be that focus on a systemic awareness, systemic understanding, interdisciplinarity, which are all really capacities that are required for climate action. And that's not happening at this point. And what I think we're doing through this paper is really saying, let us actually start shifting the focus on really, truly, genuinely looking at education as an important tool in mitigation, because this will really bring attention from policymakers, from also other kind of stakeholders, right? Which is essentially stakeholders who can resource curriculum innovation, possibly even schooling innovation, so that our children are actually prepared in a very different approach to look at what is happening in their world, and not essentially just operating with some information about, even if it's interdisciplinary, but it will still just be information then that they're left with that they can't really do anything with.
Thank you, Pallavi ma'am. We have a question from Joy Shri Arya, which kind of connects to what you're trying to say, but she's talking from a different perspective. She says, does integrating climate education into school curriculum risk shifting the burden of climate action onto students rather than policymakers and industries? So, how do we see it?
I can take that question. I can
Yeah.
start us off, and this is exactly the argument. Actually, we are also making in the paper. Like I said, in a country like India, even if we shift the burden onto students because of our per capita emissions being so low, it actually does not really have that much of a meaningful impact unless it is taken up at the policy and at the state level also, right? So I think we definitely need to shift some sort of responsibility on the policymakers. But what climate education can do is give that agency that young people and students themselves can ask for this shift by themselves, right? It's not that an external person like us coming in and telling students or young people what they need to do, but you give them that agency, you build that capacity in the students, and you give them that viewpoint around, there are certain things as an individual that you can definitely do, but there are certain things as a collective that you need to do to have a meaningful shift in the way that we are seeing climate change happening right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
if I may, I maybe it's just more like a discussion point, right? With everyone. Uh, I mean, of course, it might it's sort of like shifting the burden from the policymakers to the young generation. That's definitely true. But if you think about it, climate change it's a generational problem, right? I mean, it's we are starting to experience now. We knew it was happening, for a long time, uh, and then we sort of know what's coming in, right? So I guess it's also important, or it makes sense to educate the generation uh, properly, so that when they become policymaker, they are a lot more responsible, right? Because you can say it is maybe like a, I don't know if I can call it intergenerational multiplier effects or everything. And also, I'm talking about like what might happen in going into the future. But if you can also think about like basically being responsible citizen, I think that matters, right? I mean, if you think about a whole generation of young people getting properly educated, and getting connected to the issues, and then how they also actually sort of impact their parents, and that probably also creates this overall awareness. And probably also it's a Arjun might have said this, but it's sort of creating that pressure, I'm going to say, right, for policy change, right, in a very different way.
Yeah, so I guess key lies in not treating students as a watertight entities. They will be future leaders, they'll be policy makers, they do have an impact on how their parents' actions might change if they are educated. So, yeah, got your point, Shantanu sir. Thank you so much. Uh, um, Jaya ma'am, we have a question which I think you will be fit to answer. At the school level, what are some low cost, scalable practices that can make climate education truly experiential?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier about having your own kitchen garden, they do produce, and that can be, kind of, uh, that can be relished in their cafeteria time. That's one of the way. Other is going around the water bodies and cleaning them. See, we need to understand whatever impact, small actions we are doing. Multiple people doing small actions can create huge impact. So maybe these children are getting aware about how these all are interconnected. Basically, climate education is about the interconnectedness with so many other things. Because if you look at three pillars of sustainability, it's about environment, society, as well as economic. All these three things are interrelated. So one impacts, it impacts the other. So when we have, as kind of, we do have the bulletin boards, which is made up of jute rather than, kind of other expensive. So we do chalk out certain actionables in which we kind of teach children how to live using the sustainable solutions, because basically sustainable actions begin with sustainable thinking. So this is the idea that as schools, we are largely impacting, kind of imparting to the students.
Hmm.
Okay, so that is something that we all, even adults, also need to understand. When it talks about the climate action, uh, even adults also need to be trained on this. So that's where the national education policy talks more about, kind of putting environmental education also into the core of whatever you are teaching. By the way, how you are making the children understand the real life challenge, and coming back and see backward planning. You understand a challenge that's happening, then you work backward by finding out, sorting out, going further, then making connection, and then taking action, because ultimately this action should impact from local, regional, national, and global. So that's how. So whatever small actions which we are doing, the low cost actions, it can start with even, the flooring of the school that which we have is kind of a very much environmental suitable flooring. So these are small actions that we make the children inquire upon. They do have the curiosity why here it is like that. So they will kind of explore. There are many ways to do things, correct? So we all are part of this planet. So we all need to co-create certain actions. That's all. Yeah, thank you.
Uh,
Ravina, I can I add
yes.
something to what Jaya
Yes.
ma'am said? So we do have an example from our on-ground work. We work with the uh, Bangalore, the Greater Bangalore Authority, with Bangalore Climate Action Clubs, with 150 clubs being active in Bangalore currently. And as Jaya ma'am has said, there are a lot of low-cost solutions that students themselves are coming up in these clubs when we introduce climate education in different ways to them, right? And I can give maybe an anecdotal evidence of one school auditing their whole school around waste, and they found out where the problems lies and what are some solutions that they can come up without having too much of an impact on funding or on the finances, right? So I think if we build capacities and if we allow students the agency to take action in their environment, we will come up they can come up with amazing solutions on their own, and they are very creative in coming up with these solutions. So I think the idea is that you just enable them to take the action at their level. So yeah.
Thank you
I,
so much. Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
just want to come in with a little bit of a push. So I think equally important is really looking at honoring children's intelligence to engage in debates around worldviews. Um, I think if we are not looking at, as educators and educationists and policymakers in education, if we're not really ready to look at the implicit nature versus man, endless growth worldviews that are part of all our curriculum, right? We're not really going to have too much of a shift through many of these activities. The activities are important to do. I'm not taking away from the importance and the impact they can have, and that they will create an incredible sense of agency in children uh, is is definitely there. But as a whole system, as looking at what the aims of education are, if we're not really engaging in that conversation as educationists, as curriculum theorists, as policymakers, we're going to continue to perpetuate a paradigm of educating that is creating children's capacities to survive the system and not really look at how they can be the architects of a very different future, and a future that is very different from what was created by their parents or grandparents. So I think it's important to do both, and I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. That is an excellent point. We do have a very pertinent question. We have been talking a lot about, that it needs to be done at school level. But in India, we do realize there is CBSE schools, there are state board schools, there are government schools, there are IGCSE, ICSE. There are all kinds of schools, and India in itself is such a diverse country. So yeah, the one question uh, that one audience member asks is, how can climate education be adapted for rural and regional contexts where environmental challenges and priorities are very different from urban areas?
I mean, if I may say this, I probably mentioned this a little earlier.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, environmental problems are not only urban problems, right? It's problem. It just cuts across, right? I mean, just I guess even the question the way it came in, I guess had a preassumption that environmental problems are the problems that we are experiencing only in the urban context. Uh, I mean, maybe just to like take a step back, and then if I want to reflect on the question, maybe we should also focus on educating our children uh, about what India is, right? I mean, I'm talking about India specific stuff. That there is a like India exists beyond what we see, right? And so I mean that's probably what kind of connects back to what I was trying to say it earlier, that the environmental education shouldn't be just textbook adoption, right? And they should be exposed to, they should be I mean introduced to the problems that we all face, like as Indians, be it in urban, be it in rural, be it in like in economically poorer regions, be it in affluent regions. Because at the end of the day, we are all Indian citizens, and we are experiencing it. And the way we experience it, and the way we actually get the impact on us, that creates that like how do I say, like that injustice, right? I mean that division of who is actually getting more impacted. When it comes to climate change, we always say who is going to face the bigger impact, the one who are disadvantaged in terms of socioeconomic status in India. I mean, it's very relevant. I mean, the environmental, the context can be found anywhere.
Thank you so much, sir. If nobody has anything to say about this question, I can move on with the next one. I think a long time ago I read some report which spoke about how young people or people of my generation, Gen Z, and the coming generations have this increasing climate anxiety, which is what Aman Shakya is asking about. How can climate education address climate anxiety while promoting action and hope? Now that I remember it, I do realize that young people are not that unaware about climate issues, but because there is increasing climate anxiety that reports talk about. So yeah, what do we do about that? How can climate education bridge that?
Uh, yeah, I can take that question
Yeah.
because at the climate and education program at Asar, we are also dealing with a similar program in a different way around climate anxiety. As Pallavi had mentioned earlier, we had done a survey before the general elections in 2024. And one of the aspects that we found is young people are indeed dealing with a lot of anxiety when they hear about climate change in general, right? And from our focus group discussions that we had with these first time voters, so these were young people across age 18 to 21, we have found out that there are sort of two reasons why there is an increasing level of anxiety among that group of people. Number one being that they are aware of the issues, right? They're aware of climate change happening, they're aware of the climate disasters that are happening, but they are worried about what they can do themselves, right? And the second level of anxiety that arose was people are young people who were doing something but were not seeing any meaningful change happening, right? So I think this is where our lens around collective action also comes in, like why we are stressing that need for collective action, because at the end of the day, uh, while we as individuals can do a lot of things, right? But if our per capita emissions and our impact as an individual is not going to have an impact, and we do not see the change in that, it is going to lead to some sort of hopelessness or like anger, like why our actions are not doing anything. So the shift, I think, needs to happen, that beyond individual actions, we need to realize that we need to have some sort of collective action to have a meaningful impact around climate change.
And
Can
I'll
I add
add,
one something? Oh, I'm sorry, Pallavi, go ahead. I just wanted
I
to add an example to what you guys are going to say. Please go ahead, Pallavi.
Yeah, I'll just be quick,
Yeah,
Shantanu.
yeah.
So I just so unless young people are really experiencing lessons or sessions or activities that help them see possibility, help them see or imagine a wholly different kind of life for themselves. There's going to be very little that can mitigate their anxiety. So, a lot of the eco anxiety is coming from essentially a certain helplessness around what seems like a immovable system, right? And whatever little that can be done is really like something just turning within itself. And unless young people, their voices are heard and their ideas on how they themselves would like to be educated, which on the face of it seems like a radical idea, but I think is an idea we should entertain, which is if young people can have a say on what it is and how it is that they want to be educated for the poly crisis, maybe we will learn a lot more. And maybe we won't have to sit and think about what it is that they need or want, right? So a lot of the eco anxiety is around a helplessness, is around so it's not so much about a lack of hope, because hope can also be problematic in the sense that you can have a sort of like fluffy sense of what is positive. But definitely some very real, tangible, concrete ways where they can shift something. A group of young people or a group of children can shift something where it means that adults are taking them seriously and have changed something, will be truly mitigated for climate anxiety and eco anxiety.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, sir.
If I can just add to that, this is a great
Yes.
point, both Arjun and Pallavi raised. I think, along this line, what I guess Pallavi was saying just now, one thing I guess we should also think about that our children should learn environmental history as well, right? We have had problems, and there are great examples how, groups, they fought for something, then they struggled, but over time, with their perseverance, they're able to make some changes. Yeah. And also, when it comes to climate change, right? I mean, yes, the message is not quite good, but we just cannot give the hopelessness message to our children, right? So in the university, what we have been doing in the last 4 years or so, so we have been organizing large scale uh, events every year. Now we are actually going across the country. We call those climate festivals. Yeah. So we don't really call an exhibition or, for example, a year we pick up, say, rivers, and we just add the word called, rivers of life, right? And forest of life, right? Mountains of life. So what we do, we actually, like, start preparing for those, like, several months, like, before the event. And get a bunch of interns from, like, all over India, and they go and make a story on something, they basically send back to us. So all together, we put together stories of degradation, stories of hope, the life, or the stories of people living in that environment, right? So we just try to give a very holistic understanding of what's going on in that particular environment, right? Of course, climate change becomes part of that. And what do we want? We want students to have this immersive experience, right? When they go through it, and then, they, at the end, when they go out, we want them to actually sort of experience it and say that, it's not over yet. I mean, people have done something. Yes, we are in the middle of some trouble, but maybe we can be part of the solution. So, and these festivals, they bring a lot of people, like 10 15,000 students every year, over a 2 week span. So this is something, I guess, like, this, how you send the message of hope, and how you basically say that, it's not over yet, probably can help reduce the anxiety a little.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. We have an interesting comment from Mr. Suhas Kolekar. First, I would like to inform all our viewers who are watching this to please drop their email IDs in the comment section. We will be offering free subscription of the Hindu to those of you who have asked a question here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. Suhas Kolekar says climate crisis related issues are beyond the simple environment education. So putting in education curriculum is not going to be of much help unless the teachers parents get better understanding about climate crisis. The very ability and the confidence to raise question needs to be nurtured. Climate crisis is the effect of what is being imposed on people and communities in the name of development without involving them in decision making. So what, based on whatever reporting I have done uh, across some stories about climate change, I have noticed that in cities like Pune there are a lot of these groups where parents, teachers, and they come together, and if they, there is going to be some tree cutting, or the riverfront development project, or highway construction project for which a hill is going to be chopped off, whenever something like this comes up, all of these adults, they do get their children, students, to be a part of these protests. So where, how do you think that can help? Would
I
that be
can
a better way? Yeah.
I can take that question. So we are so two pieces of work we're doing in Bangalore. One is, of course, as Arjun mentioned, we've been working with the Greater Bangalore Authority, with the Bangalore Climate Action Clubs in schools. A very big part of the work with the children is also working with teachers, and this is um, important only because perspectives in educators' minds are what's going to sustain and carry forward a lot of these endeavors. There are a lot of other kinds of groups of adults, like you mentioned. So the other piece of work in Bangalore is we've been working with RWAs, where there are adults who would like to look at RWA spaces as informal education spaces and work with children over weekends around issues like waste and water and energy to understand it from a climate perspective. So unless these two come together, so what's happening outside school needs to in some way be echoed in school, and unless both these happen, it's not really going to create that kind of impression in a young person's mind. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say about what the gentleman said in his question or his remark is very true. We are not talking enough to two very important stakeholders, and that is parents and teachers. Parents and teachers, and are essentially those people who are explicitly or implicitly shaping young people's thinking. And if we're not actually engaging them, understanding what they have to say, what their anxieties are, and if we are not engaging them in a conversation where we're kind of showing them that what they're really preparing their children for, a future they're preparing their children for, is really not going to exist. So, if that is the case, then what would they like aspirations to be for their children? We're not having that conversation. And unless we have that conversation, we're not going to actually be able to take a very clear mandate from essentially voters, right? And parents and teachers are also voters. We're not going to be able to take a clear mandate to governments to actually, or policymakers, to say, this is what people with children would like for their children, right? So I think it's very, very important that we be talking to parents definitely as stakeholders to understand where the pushes and pulls are about changing perspectives around futures for children.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have one question which says, what is the right time to incorporate the syllabus in school? Now, when I read this, I immediately got reminded of one series that I was recently watching, which is like a very fancy school, and they were teaching something about climate change. And one a young girl had a panic attack or something, and there was a lot of backlash. Like parents came and they complained that you can't be teaching this to our students and all. So in that terms, it also brings me to my question: is there any amount of backlash to climate education being imparted in schools?
Can I take up this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, in my experience, I haven't witnessed such kind of what you're mentioning about. The reason is very simple. When we are introducing climate education in an organic way to the children, I think it all gets settled. So, what we are supposed to do is that we weave around a big idea, the big idea that we are going to impart to the children need to have this kind of the climate education as part of it. So if we are taking climate education as a big idea, maybe we will get the other way around. We will get maybe the kind of back lash what you are mentioning about. But I think we need to look at in a different perspective, as in this should be a part of a big idea that we are exploring or researching upon. So if we can do that, and there is no right time for that. For example, if you're looking at a very foundational age or maybe primary children, they will do right. They will. We can of course ask them to be more sustainable by or be more mindful by using the pencil, how the pencil need to be sustained till they are able to hold it. When it comes to higher grades, they will further take it up ahead, and they might even say which is the tree that is more sustainable. People all are planting trees, but which tree is more sustainable? My mentor, who who was a scientist, mentioned that jackfruit tree is the most sustainable tree. So like that, if they, so the imparting the climate education, there is no right time. Every time when we put this climate education in an organic way, that will not make the children stressed about what they are learning, and the learning becomes more meaningful also. So I think I'm able to give some insight on one of the question, as well as some insights about what we are talking about right
Yes,
now.
ma'am. Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Anyone else would like to talk about any kind of resistance to climate education that you may have experienced? No. Okay. There is another question which Aman Shakya asks, which is, should climate literacy be seen as essential for future policymakers, lawyers, and judges? Now, that would require a lot of, I think, if making it essential would itself require it to be put into policy, and again, we would have to get into what exactly is climate literacy, etc. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I guess in short, yes. So it has to be. Point is,
Yeah.
everybody. I guess like that. Jokes apart. Uh, when we, like, as educator, as practitioners, when we try to talk about climate change, as we try to talk about the scenarios that like what happened, what's going to happen, right? It becomes difficult at times, because the major section of the society, I'm going to say, right, haven't had the proper environmental education. I mean, we discussed this earlier, right? And then for someone like who can help implement a policy, shape a policy, right? uh, it would make a lot more sense if that section of the society uh, gets educated or literate, like properly, about climate change, right? But in what form? Of course, we should probably think about short-term modules and courses. It would also be helpful if the different state governments, maybe, they start taking these initiatives, in educating, their people in a policy space. That's my like take on it. I know Pallavi and or Junil also have, because of the experience of working, yeah, on the ground.
Yeah. Thank
So
you
I
so
want to
much.
bring it back to teachers, and
Yeah, yeah.
so I think the question was kind of wide. It was asking about policymakers and lawyers. Um, I'd like to speak about teachers and education departments, or SERT officials, or people, officers. I think that sort of perspective, on an interdisciplinary perspective on climate change, and that systemic understanding of climate change, and an intersectional understanding of climate change is really important. And I think that would really help in ensuring that climate change is just not something that is mentioned as the synonym to global warming in a textbook, which is what it is currently across, I think, all states in the country. And the education of teachers, the teacher preparation, perspective building is crucial. In fact, otherwise it's going to be fairly dead knowledge in textbooks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, One last, I'll just go through some comments because there are a lot of them coming in. Uh, yeah, we have one from Dwayapan Das, who says that this discussion invites and imbibes a tenet from David Attenborough. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. In that context, how can climate education ensure that students move beyond awareness to actually adopting sustainable behaviors in their daily lives? I think this is something we have discussed. Then, yeah, other than that, we have comments that talk about how waste segregation can be taught early on. We emphasize on waste segregation and composting right from class one, also segregate paper and plastic for recycling. Can climate education alone help solve environmental issues, or other measures needed? Yeah, can we take this before as a closing remark?
So I'll maybe just just comment briefly on this. Climate education alone cannot solve our environmental and climate crisis, but it can help creating the overall awareness and basically educating. Uh, I'm going to say climate education in broader sense right now, right? At least having people understand, what it means, right? That hopefully creates the self-realization, help change behavior and makes everyone a much more responsible citizen. That helps in solving the overall environmental crisis or the climate crisis.
Thank you, sir. Any closing remarks from our other panelists?
Yeah, making informed choices is something which I would like to say. So we as individuals, we can make informed choices with whatever the resources we have with us. How are we going to utilize it? That makes a lot of difference to the people as well as for ourselves.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this space evolves and how we move beyond seeing climate education as an awareness building or like adaptation or resilience building tool and into seeing it as a legitimate mitigation tool for climate change. So yeah, very excited to see this evolve.
Thank you so much. Pallavi, ma'am.
Yeah, so I'd like to close by saying that I think we should be ready for a lot more innovation in education, and I'm not saying innovation in the sense of let's bring AI into education. I mean, there's a lot of talk about that. I'm actually saying if we were to get as preoccupied as we are about the impact of AI on education, if we got as preoccupied with it in terms of what climate change is going to do to our children's futures, I think we'll have to get down to really innovating a lot more. And I want to say that at this point, our governments are doing what they're mandated to do. What they're doing is, you know, of course, as Shantanu said, there is. I mean, there is the history of curriculum, even with the environmental studies curriculum. But I think it's really important to actually see that we start looking at people's, and this is teachers and students' voices in this innovation process, right? And really understand what it is that once they sort of have perspectives on climate change, what is it that they would like in the education system, right? And I think this conversation, the innovation conversations and the building needs a lot more resourcing. And I think through our paper, what we're trying to show and demonstrate is that a mitigation focus, we hope, will make funders, people who are interested in education, actually resource this. Education is a very underfunded space. I mean, in terms of there is a lot being done, of course, to increase literacy, numeracy, etc. But there's very little happening to in terms of resourcing to look at what we need to change in the education system itself to prepare our young for the future.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This has been a wonderful session. One thing that I've definitely learned is that climate education needs to move beyond textbooks, though theoretical knowledge and understanding what are greenhouse gases, understanding what are emissions and how they can be reduced needs to be learned. There needs to be an implicit, as Jayashree ma'am said, that there is also a need to teach this implicitly. And though when we talk about climate education at a school level, we are not necessarily boxing it or putting the shifting the onus on children, but this is going to give us intergenerational better effects, in the sense that these kids are further going to be policymakers, lawyers, judges, etc. And hence, as Arjun sir quoted, I think 3 tons of CO2 emissions per person per year has been reduced, is what studies have shown. And yeah, I guess with these remarks, I would like to close this conversation that yes, climate education is important. It is high time that we introduce it in our school curriculum. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.